Greetings and welcome to my skirret bed. So it is a few weeks here past the winter solstice, which makes it a perfect time to tend to our skirret, both with harvesting and then also replanting. So skirret is in the umbel family, which is a cousin to the carrots and the parsnips. It tastes more like a parsnips, but it kind of has the texture of a potato, nice and smooth and creamy. Unlike a carrot and a parsnip though, it is perennial, which makes it a brilliant addition to your home garden because it's super low maintenance. And what you do is once you start it once from seed, you can select your own skirret varietal type by planting it vegetatively year after year. And that's kind of what I've been doing here for the last 5 years. This is not a very good representation though of what my skirret crop looks like. I had water issues this summer, and so my skirret is a lot more meager than what it usually is. It's usually a lot more plumper and juicier. With that, skirret loves a lot of water. So if you live in an area without a lot of water, like California, probably not the best plant for you, but if you do have a lot of access to water, then go for it. Also, it doesn't like hot temperatures too much. So things over 90, it gets kind of grumpy with the world. Otherwise, it's really low maintenance and easy, and then you can eat the greens in the spring, and then you can also eat the roots all throughout the winter. Anytime that your ground isn't frozen from November onwards, you got roots. So it makes it easy for adding additions to soups and salads and also frying it up. It's quite a lovely little plant. Documentable in history, going all the way back to the Romans with Tiberius. He was a big fan of it, always had it imported in from Germany. And then you can see it in seeds catalogs all the way up into the 1800s, and then also in the literature quite often throughout Europe. Fell out of favor in the 1700s, most likely replaced by the potato, and then also nowadays you don't see it around because it just doesn't hold up to modern agricultural practices. This flesh is so delicate it gets beat up quite often, and then also it's difficult to harvest. I mean, look at this thing. It's difficult enough to harvest in your own garden, let alone trying to do this on a large scale. So skirret. There are, if you're looking at the literature pre-1600s, there's a couple different techniques that are described to plant your skirret or to, tend to your skirret. Two of them, the Good Housewife Guide of Paris, talks about harvesting your skirret in February, and then the Gerard's Herbal talks about replanting your skirret in March. And then you have the outlier, Thomas Hill, who talks about starting your skirret in the fall, like October, November time period. And my guess is what's happening there is that Thomas Hill is talking about starting it from seeds. So skirret will readily self-seed in your garden if you let it go to seed. And I have a few examples of that, but also quite commonly, like a lot of our other older vegetable types, the seeds still have like a thick coating that has to get dissolved over a few weeks or a few months of cool, moist temperature. And what that does, it allows the baby skirrets not to sprout too early. And so then that way, it's a way to help kind of time to make sure skirret starts when it needs to and won't get damaged by the frost. So this is a baby skirret in my garden right now. Let's see. It's not catching it. Anyway, it looks most like a standard dicot seedling. So, and if you're not careful, these will take over your yard, which maybe you want. But be mindful, it's maybe a possible invasive like so many of the other umbel families that are out there. So with that, let's jump into the garden. So this is what remains of my skirret bed for the year. I only planted about an 8x4 section this year. I was really giving preference to other vegetables in my growing area. So you can see what remains of the few plants that are left. I've already harvested some down here. You can see that fresh one that I was just showing earlier there in the hole that it came out of. And then these are the remaining clumps that are still yet to be harvested. So you can either trim down your skirrets, or you can leave them and let them stay up. I do this because the finches tend to really adore coming in here and pulling out what seeds are left from the seed hedge. And you can see that beautiful umbel shape flower cluster, like what we have with parsleys and carrots and all the other umbelliferae that skirret's related to. And then down here, we follow it down and we have the clump. So I had water issues, but in general, it's a really good idea to mulch your skirret heavily. and this is mulched in with straw. And then I am not active enough in my garden to keep Skirret as well watered as it needs to be, so I have drip irrigation on timers that I use to make sure that Skirret has enough water. You can see that I've kind of planted them here, maybe like 8 inches apart, and that seems to do pretty darn well and allows you to get a root crop that looks something like that. How I like to harvest my Skirret is I'll take a shovel and I'll kind of come about 4 inches around. So we're really pretty lucky with Skirret that the roots don't grow very far out. You can see, they don't expand much past their growing point, so an 8-inch diameter harvest zone will be pretty well. And then they're also not too deep, right? They're about a spade's depth, and so which also makes it very lovely and very easy to harvest, especially in kind of a nice raised beds like this. And so I'll just take my shovel, work it around, sometimes move out some of this soil so I can get a little bit further deep. And then the last shovel stroke is at an angle that goes underneath. I might break off a few roots, some of the deeper ones, but it doesn't really matter too much. And then I just pop it and leverage it out. And then at that point in time, now that these things are a little bit more dormant, the canes, the stalks from last year, pop off really easily. The stalks are hollow, which may mean that there may be some bees or other creatures that are living underneath here, some friends of the garden that I don't want to get rid of. So I don't put this in the green waste, I just kind of put it in a pile, and then I'll move this to a corner of my garden, so if there are any bees or overwintering insects that I want to keep, they'll have a chance to come out and play in the spring. And so then after you pull this up, you give it a good wash, and you have your Skirret. Ta-da! And Skirret is really muddy. It takes a little bit of washing. I've washed this a few times and you can see how the mud still clings onto it, the dirt still clings onto it. So, and then it also pulls apart into smaller little pieces like this. And you can see like I'm taking the growing points and just pulling them apart, which is key for a successful Skirret replanting, because you don't want to plant a big hunk like this. It tends, like any other root vegetable, that the closer that you plant your roots, that will affect the final harvest size of your Skirret. So the small, it seems really kind of counterintuitive, but the smaller nubbin that you plant, the better off you'll be in the end. And so then for harvest, it doesn't require any fancy tools or anything. You could cut these, but you can also just put this in my other set of hands, my knees. You can just snap it off like that. Well, this does have a little bit of the woody core that they talk about. You can tell I had water issues, and so things got a little droughty, and so these are not nearly as luscious and crisp as they could be. So I guess this is where having a pair of shears or scissors might come in handy to harvest these. Or you can just tear it apart, it's fine. And then what will happen is we'll plant this little nubbin, and then here at the base you can start to see when all these little fine hairs will start to come out, kind of almost like a tulip and how a tulip grows. But these are actually roots, not bulbs or corms. And so we'll plant that in the garden, and then over the course of 9 months, we'll get another lovely little Skirret patch. It'll grow nice, big, and strong. Let me take you over to the bed that I'm moving this into. I harvested a couple extra Skirrets, and I plucked off all the roots, and you can see that there's various different sizes. There's some that are really nice and large, and some that are a little bit more scrawny and wrinkled. It's probably due to I had water issues. There's also some red spots going on, so I'm hoping this is not a fungal disease or scab or something setting in, but it's Oregon, there's fungus everywhere. And so then these other bits are other examples of sizes of Skirret plants that you can replant. There's larger ones like this, or even larger if you're doing it for more of an ornamental setting. Thomas Hill does mention growing these in the corners of your gardens as just kind of an ornamental plant. If you do so, the pollinators will absolutely adore you, and then probably the birds afterwards. And then we have different sizes here, some with a few little nubbins, these growing points up here, with or without roots. I haven't really seen a difference, but I'm hoping to maybe with this planting, various different root stages and density of little baby skirrets. Or you can plant them, even just these little bitty guys. Just so long as they have an intact base and maybe some roots growing on with them. So these fine little threads are the baby roots that are gonna start growing for you. So these are all examples of things that could grow and take well. Things that would not work well, as you can see this one, when I was pulling things apart, I pulled apart the base. And so this doesn't have any roots and this won't do anything. This is just compost now. So same with this one. It's just bent and twisted. Even though there's a little root, it's not worth it. So, but these are nice healthy ones and I'll go ahead and plant them. And so when I'm planting the larger ones, I like to do it kind of like a bare root tree where I make a cone of soil and then I drape the roots over it. And then I'm just gonna kind of backfill over it, making sure that these growing points here are at soil level surface. Ta-da! You don't want to bury these deep because that's the growing point right there. So, and then otherwise, if you're planting some of these other smaller sections, you can either just shove them in the soil like that and tuck them in, or if you wanted to get fancy, you can use a dibbler or some other more, or a tool of some sort, and make a little hole and then take one, insert it, and then tuck the soil up around it. And so then after that, I'll probably side dress it with some compost, mulch it in, and my skirret bed will be ready to go for another year. Ta-da! All right, so that's skirret. I hope you have fun, and I hope that you give skirret a try. So skirret is hardy down to zone 5 as a perennial, which is great for most of the United States. And then it does like a lot of water and it doesn't like really hot temperatures. So if you do live somewhere warm, maybe put it on the north side of your house, give it a little bit of extra shade. And then if you live somewhere like California, probably not the best crop for you to grow down there where it is so hot and water is so restrictive. So, but other places like here in the Pacific Northwest, it should do you really, really well. So, skirret. It's very crunchy. And tasty too. So I hope you have fun. I hope you get some dirt under your fingernails. Take care. Stay safe. So a quick addendum. I couldn't sleep very well at night knowing that I had those orange spotted roots in this bed. So I went ahead and pulled out anything that had orange roots or came from plants that had orange roots or were growing near plants that had orange roots. And I just transplanted back in 9 nice larger clumps of skirret. And you can see my irrigation going on there, and then a pile of skirret to the right that I'll cook up into a stew probably tonight. And then the goal with this for this year is I know we're not going to have any big gatherings that I want to do a lot of skirret output for. So this is to hold over the genetics. And so then come February 2022, I can plant it out into a larger bed with smaller clumps in hopes that maybe in January 2023, maybe we can have skirret on one of our feast menus. So, anyway, hope all is well. Hope to see you soon.